Welcome to the second tutorial. Let's get started with animating our player character. Click on Window, Animation and open the animation window. We will use this to animate our player. Select Player Game Object in our hierarchy and then click on Create. This will ask you to save the animation clip that you will be creating. I want to save it in a new folder under Assets. I will name it as Animations. Inside it, I will create another folder, name it as Player, for saving all player related animation clips. I will name the new animation clip as Walk and click on Save. Now here we can add or change the properties to animate our game object. Click on Add Property. Currently we have only two properties that we can use, Transform and Sprite Renderer. We will use Sprite Renderer to change the sprite to animate our character. I will drag and drop all the sprites that are used for walk animation. Go to Walk folder and select all the sprites, drag and drop them in the animation panel. This will create animation frames. If you click on play and observe our player, he is animating very fast. We have to slow the animation. We can either slow the sample rate, which will reduce the speed between each frames, or we can move the frames to adjust time. We will move frames, select all the animation frames except the first one and move it to the right side. I want to change frame after every 5 seconds. Repeat the process for the rest of the frames. Select all from the current frame and except the current one and release them at the next 5 seconds. You can deselect the current sprite by control clicking it and then moving the rest of the frames. Let's repeat it for all the frames. Now, if I click on play, you can see our player is animating at a slower pace. Let's adjust the sample rate to match our frames. Set the sample rate at 50. Now if I click on play again, this looks better. Let's make another animation. If you look at the player folder, we have sprites for duck, jump and idle animation. Let's create an idle animation. Click on the drop down, click create new clip, name it as idle. Make sure you are saving your files in the correct location. Unity usually opens the last active directory as your save location, so confirm before saving your animation clips. So give a name and click on save. For idle, we will use only two sprites, the front and stand. Drag them into the animation window. Place the second sprite at around 30 seconds. And again at around 1 minute, we will go back to our first sprite. Let's see how this looks. This looks good. Now open the Animator window. This window is useful to control the way you want to animate your character, like changing from one animation to another based on some conditions. We currently have walk animation as our default animation. So when the game starts, our player starts playing walk animation. Let's make idle as our default animation. You can do that by right clicking on the idle animation and select set as layer default state. Now when the game starts and animation entry happens with our idle animation, you can see our idle animation is playing repeatedly. Let's come out of play mode. Now I want to transition from idle to walk animation. Right click on idle animation, select make transition, and then select the next animation clip that you want to play. That's walk for us. We need to add a condition for the transition on when we want to change to the next animation. Select the transition arrow and we can see some new properties in the inspector panel. Now if I play a game, our character will start with idle animation and then changes to walk animation. This is because by default Unity changes to next animation after the exit time of animation. We don't need this behavior for our game. We want our player to make a transition to walk when we click on a button. Click on parameters and then click on the plus drop down. We can add 4 types of transition conditions that are either of type float, int, bool or a trigger that can be changed from our script. Let's add a variable of boolean type and name it as walk. Select the transition arrow. Under condition, add a new condition for our bool. So when our bool becomes true, our player will transition from idle to walk animation. If I click on play, and now we are repeating idle animation, and once I make the bool to true, it transitions to walk animation. If I make bool to false, it will still remain in walk animation as we haven't set any other transition from walk. Let's quickly work on that. Come out of play, right click on walk, select transition and click on walk. Select the transition arrow and add a new condition. Let's make walk bool to false for making a transition. Let's test it one more time. We start with idle, enabling bool, we move to walk animation, and when disabled, we move back to idle animation. This is how the animator controller is used to change animations. Now let's work on creating another animation. Let's make a jump animation. Go to the animation window, make sure our character is still selected. Create a new animation by clicking on the drop down. If you notice, we are inside the player folder that has the sprites, as this was the last active directory we have used. Go to the animation folder where we are saving our animation clips, and player folder, save the clip as jump. Now drag the jump sprite into the animation window. We have only one sprite for jump. We will reuse it at 1 minute to show player is in here. This may not look like player is jumping, but when we transition from one animation to another and when we introduce physics, you can see the difference. Go to the animator window and create a new boolean variable and name it as jump. When we make a transition from walk to jump with a condition set to jump as true. We will transition to idle animation. Once we finish jump animation, we will not use any condition for this. Once jump animation is finished Animator controller will transition back to idle animation. Now let's play test. Currently we are in idle animation. When I enable the walk bool, we move to walk animation. If I enable the jump bool to true, then we transition to jump animation. It was fast. Let me delete the transition and play one more time. Enable bool. We are still repeating the jump animation, so this looks okay for now. Now, a small task for you guys. Create a new animation clip. Call it as duck. Use the p1_duck sprite to make this animation. Also set the transition condition in the animator window. Pause the video and come back once you have done it. Were you able to create the animation? If not, no problem. So let's get started. Drag the duck sprite into the animation window. We will reuse the same sprite at 1 minute. Now go to Animator Window. Make a transition from walk to duck and create a new bool called duck. Also create another transition from duck to walk. Now select the transition arrow and set the condition. Also transition back from jump to walk when jump bool is false. This is the basic setup that any animator controller will have. We will use script to transition from one animation to another. We will work on them in further videos. Now when we play our game, we start with idle animation and enabling and disabling the boolean variables transitions to other animation clip. So now the jump animation and once the jump is disabled, we'll get back to idle animation or the walk animation, and then the duck animation. This looks good for now. We will edit them more in the next video. We will not have any delay when we change from one animation to another. Thanks for watching.